None.
ಸರಿ, ಸ್ಪಿರಿಚುವಲ್ ಟ್ರೈನಿಂಗ್ ಓದೋಣ ಹಾಗಾದ್ರೆ. ಮಧ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಲ್ಲಿಸಿ, ನಾವು ಒಂದು ಪ್ಯಾರಾಗ್ರಾಫ್ ಎರಡು ಪ್ಯಾರಾಗ್ರಾಫ್ ಓದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ನಿಲ್ಲಿಸ್ತೀನಿ. ಇಫ್ ದೇರ್ ಎನಿ ಕ್ವೆಶನ್ಸ್ ಯು ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಆಸ್ಕ್ ಮೀ, then we can continue. Some of them are fairly straightforward and self-explanatory. Our present moral and religious degradation is due mostly to our environment and our wrong training. The proper molding of the mind is altogether neglected in all spaces of education and training. Every possible effort is made to provide for worldly training of the right type in order to enable a man to secure a decent and comfortable living, but the proper training required for the realization of the self is totally neglected. The least significance, if at all, is attached to this most vital problem of life. Reciting daily a few verses in praises of the god or goddesses, or observing certain mechanical formalities by way of worship, is all that the masses are taught to do. They do it for their whole life, but probably without any gain whatsoever. Internal calmness still remains wanting in them. Activities of the mind, such as desires, temptations, and emotional outbursts, remain as they were ever before. So, ರಿಯಲ್ ಮೌಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಮೈಂಡ್ ಆಯ್ತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಏನೇನೆಲ್ಲ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಫ್ಯೂ ಲೈನ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ. ಆ ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಫ್ಯೂ ಲೈನ್ಸ್ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಇಂಟರ್ನಲ್ ಕಾಮ್ನೆಸ್ ಅಂತ, ಅಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಬ್ರಾಕೆಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಹಾಕೊಳ್ರಿ. ಮೆಡಿಟೇಷನ್ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಾಯ್ತು, ನೀವು ಸ್ಪಿರಿಚುವಲಿ ಗ್ರೋತ್ ಆಗ್ತಿದ್ದೀರಾ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇಂಟರ್ನಲ್ ಕಾಮ್ನೆಸ್ ಬರ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಶುರು ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಆಕ್ಟಿವಿಟೀಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಮೈಂಡ್ ವಿಲ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಕಮಿಂಗ್ ಡೌನ್. ವಾಟ್ ಆರ್ ದ ಆಕ್ಟಿವಿಟೀಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಮೈಂಡ್? ಡಿಸೈರ್ಸ್ ವಿಲ್ ಕಮ್ ಡೌನ್, ಟೆಂಪ್ಟೇಷನ್ಸ್ ವಿಲ್ ಕಮ್ ಡೌನ್, ಎಮೋಷನಲ್ ಔಟ್ಬರ್ಸ್ ವಿಲ್ ಕಮ್ ಡೌನ್, unduly getting influenced by the external issues will come down. All these things will happen. That's an indication that the mind is now, activities of the mind is gradually coming down. ಇದಾರ್ಥ ಆಯ್ತಾ? So our paragraph really, the proper molding of the mind is altogether neglected. So what we do in Sahaj Marg is that we don't praise the mind as a friend or a foe. All that we do is proper training or the molding of the mind. That is what we do in Sahaj Marg. The main purpose of training is that a man should begin to imbibe within him as much as godly attributes are possible. Please put that in bracket. ಟ್ರೈನಿಂಗ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗಬೇಕು? ಆಕ್ಟಿವಿಟೀಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಮೈಂಡ್ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಆಗಬೇಕು, ಗಾಡ್ಲಿ ಅಟ್ರಿಬ್ಯೂಟ್ಸ್ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಮ್ಯಾನಿಫೆಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಶುರು ಆಗಬೇಕು. ವಿ ನೀಡ್ ಟು ಇಂಬೈಬ್ ಅವರ್ ಅಬ್ಸಾರ್ಬ್ ಮೋರ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಮೋರ್ ಆಫ್ ಗಾಡ್ಲಿ ಅಟ್ರಿಬ್ಯೂಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಶೋ ದೆಮ್. If this is not achieved, the system of training is defective and consequently is of no avail. The proper making of a man must be a natural result of the right type of training. Proper making is comprised of the right molding of the mind with due moderation in the exercise of all our senses and faculties. ಮತ್ತೊಂದು ಡೆಫಿನೇಷನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ರು. ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ ಮೌಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? ಬ್ರಿಂಗಿಂಗ್ ಆಲ್ ದ ಸೆನ್ಸಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಫ್ಯಾಕಲ್ಟೀಸ್ ಇನ್ ಟು ಮಾಡರೇಷನ್. ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಮೌಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಮೈಂಡ್. ರಿಮೆಂಬರ್ ಒನ್ ಥಿಂಗ್, ಮೈಂಡ್ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಸೆಂಟ್ರಲ್ ಇದೆ, ಸೆನ್ಸಸ್ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಟೆಂಟಕಲ್ಸ್ ತರ, 5 ಕರ್ಮೇಂದ್ರಿಯ 5 ಜ್ಞಾನೇಂದ್ರಿಯ, ಅದು ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಡೆ ಹರಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದೆ ಟೆಂಟಕಲ್ಸ್. The mind eats through these tentacles, it partakes food through these tentacles, and then ultimately the mind absorbs whatever it gets from the tentacles. Now, when the mind is unregulated, it goes on absorbing all necessary and unnecessary things through these senses. When the mind gets properly molded, the mind will start discriminating or filtering out unnecessary influences at the level of the senses itself. It does not allow unnecessary thing to come from the senses to the mind itself for it to get absorbed. It just filters at the level of the senses only. That is what happens. In other words, the senses and the faculties will gradually come into a dormant state. Like how it was when we were born for the first time as a human. Not in this life. When we were born first time as a human, at that stage, how the senses were dormant, to that stage, we can actually take it back. So in other words, you are reversing the program. ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ರಿವರ್ಸ್ ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರಿಂಗ್ ಕೇಳಿದೀವಲ್ಲ. So you are now reverse engineering to go back to your original state. This is also coming under the definition of proper molding of the mind. Thus, the right type of training Under the guidance of the capable master, he by far the most important factor in our proper making, without which higher attainments in spirituality are never possible. Most of the people have, in some way or the other, a natural inclination towards God. Yet those who succeed in realizing God are very rare. The cause is defective guidance and wrong training, which leads a man away from the real path with the result that he is lost forever. So, ಕಾಮನ್ ಆಗಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಮಿಸ್ಟೇಕ್ ಯಾವುದು? ಡಿಫೆಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಗೈಡೆನ್ಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ರಾಂಗ್ ಟ್ರೈನಿಂಗ್. Now, for a man of ordinary capacity, it's a pretty hard task to judge whether his training is rightly directed or not. A man named tamely and unquestioningly follows the instructions of one whom he has accepted as his guru and practices as is required by him to do so. It is very difficult for him to ascertain whether he is being guided along the right path or not. This is a great problem before the people who are themselves quite ignorant in matters concerning realization. You will find numerous teachers of religion who will tell you not to eat garlic, onion, or carrot and insist upon you to adopt sadhana and practices which have no real significance, or 100 other such triflings which will never lead you even a step nearer to reality. This is no training. Such teachers are really deceiving themselves as well as those whom they teach. You must be sure that until so hagare proper training ಆಗ್ತಿದೆ ಅಂತ how do we know? This next line will give you an indication. You must be sure that until unless internal peace, calmness of the mind, simplicity, and lightness follow as the natural result of your practices, you are proceeding on the wrong lines and your training is defective. So it's given you see 3 or 4 clues. Internal peace ಬರ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಶುರು ಆಗಬೇಕು, ಕಾಮ್ನೆಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಮೈಂಡ್ ಬರಬೇಕು, ಸಿಂಪ್ಲಿಸಿಟಿ ಬರಬೇಕು, ಲೈಟ್ನೆಸ್ ಬರಬೇಕು. ಈ 4 ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ನೀವು ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ ವೇನಲ್ಲಿ ಡೆವಲಪ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಾ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ರಿ ನಿಖಿಲ್.
ಸರ್, ಒಂದು ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಯೋಚನೆ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು ಸರ್ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಓದ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ. ಲೈಕ್ ದೇ ಆರ್ ಮೆನ್ಷನಿಂಗ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ garlic, onion, carrot ಅಲ್ಲ ಈ ಥರದ ಥಿಂಗ್ಸ್ಗಳು. ಬಿಕಾಸ್ I've listened to many talks in a very similar way in terms of how some foods are tamasa foods ಅಂತಲ್ಲ is portrayed. So how it might corrupt in your sadhana process ಅಂತ. But why is like master here talking about how that is not the right process and all ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ?
He is talking about it that that's not the main thing to focus on. We need to focus on the right things. Then some of these small things will drop off themselves. We should not worry. We need to focus on the bigger issue and not get entangled in the small issue of whether to eat onion or not onion, whether to eat garlic or not to eat garlic. These are all trifling issues.
So in that scenario, the argument can be similar argument can also be made in terms of eating non-veg or having alcohol also kuda alla?
ಇಲ್ಲ.
Why is that different?
Very simple. Alcohol and non-veg or drugs destroy the very mind which you are going to use for our training. Onion or garlic is only going to make some aspect of passion of the mind a bit more prominent. That's all it does. But when you eat non-veg or when you take alcohol or drugs, it fundamentally changes the very nature of the functioning of the mind. Now we are using the functioning of the mind as an aid for our journey. So if we make the instrument that we are going to use defective, how are we going to realize the goal? This is like saying that I'm going to use a bike to reach a particular goal, but I'm going to puncture the tire multiple times, but I'm going to reach the goal. That's like it's saying that. So it is, don't compare onion garlic issue with non-veg. In fact, there are 3 categories what you spoke about. Simple issues like onion, garlic, or carrot, that is one issue, one level. It has some impact of the mind. They are not major issues. Non-veg is something that's going to make it even more grosser. So that's the second thing. So compared to onion and garlic, the non-veg is going to make it far more grosser than otherwise. That's why in our system, we insist that they should be away from non-veg. Last is the issue of alcohol and drugs. They are highly detrimental because they destroy the mind itself, which is the very instrument that we are supposed to use to reach our goal. Okay? So these are the three issues. Any other question? ನೋಡ್ರಿ ನಿಖಿಲ್ ಯಾವಾಗಲೂ ಬಂದರೂ ಕೂಡ ಕಾಂಗ್ರೆಸ್ ತರ ಕೈ ಎತ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ಲಿ ನಿಖಿಲ್ ಕಾಂಗ್ರೆಸ್ ಪಾರ್ಟಿನವರು ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ.
ಸರ್ ನೀವು ಇದನ್ನ ಅಪ್ಲೋಡ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬಲ್ಲಿ ಅಪ್ಲೋಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರೆ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಈ ಥರ ಎಲ್ಲ ಇದು ಮಾಡಬಾರ್ದು.
ಸರಿ, ತೊಂದರೆ ಇಲ್ಲ. ನಾವು ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬಲ್ಲಿ ಅಪ್ಲೋಡ್ ಮಾಡಿ ನೀವೇನು ಚಿಂತೆ ಮಾಡಬೇಡ್ರಿ. ಆಯ್ತು, ಸರಿ.
One question, brother.
ಹೇಳಿ.
So, how does, thinking from the samskaras perspective, how does alcohol or drugs affect the mind, as in the samskaras, basically?
It makes the mind more grosser, oriented towards grossness. When it makes the mind oriented more towards the grossness, where is the question of refinement of the mind? Not only you are destroying the mind or the structure and functioning of the mind, you are also moving towards more and more grossness.
So it's the fact that a grosser person is intaking drugs or alcohol and he's doing more grosser things. That's the problem.
Exactly. And that is the reason why within few years of regular drinking, the liver fails.
It becomes very gross. Okay.
What is cirrhosis? Cirrhosis is nothing but solidity of the liver. And why does the liver become solid? He accumulates lot of samskaras in the liver. So the liver fails. That's all that happens. Now, likewise, for example, if somebody takes regular painkillers, that makes the kidneys accumulate lot of samskaras and the kidneys go into failure. The commonest reason why kidneys fail in India is because of abuse of painkillers. So this is a very interesting point. Not only the solidity of the grossness increases in the system, particular organs are far more vulnerable for that solidity of the grossness. Okay? Depending on what is it that we take. And that's a very interesting point. Helri Nikhil.
ಸರ್ ಇದು ಹಾಗಾದ್ರೆ if anything that causes ಮೈಂಡ್ಗೆ ಅದು ಸಮಥಿಂಗ್ ಇಸ್ ಕಾಸಿಂಗ್ ಇಶ್ಯೂ ಟು ದ ಮೈಂಡ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಬೇಸಿಕ್ಲಿ ಆ ವೆಹಿಕಲ್ನ ಹಾಳು ಮಾಡ್ತಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಏನೇ ಇದ್ರೂ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಅಂದರೆ there are other aspects of what also harms the mind alva, like emotions, intense emotions, bad emotions. That is one side. The other side is people who are like mentally challenged, so they can never attain God or spirituality, highest forms of spirituality anta arthana hagadre.
Correct interpretation. So people who are mentally challenged cannot realize the God in this life.
Okay, they're just they're living their fate hagadre.
They are there to just undergo and shed some samskaras. The blessing is because they have mental incapacity, they don't form new samskaras. They don't develop the ego like other normal people. And they have no idea what they are doing because of mental incapacity. Because of that, they don't form samskaras. However, as they go through the process of the motion of life, some of the samskaras come to the bhoga and they shed those bhoga. That is how they benefit out of this life of mental incapacity. Even then, you don't say that their life actually ended in what you say, a loss. No. In fact, they are far better in shedding the samskaras than normal people. Most of the normal people, rather than shed the samskaras, end their life adding on to the total load of the samskaras. Most of them. But mentally incapacitated people always end up on the negative side, in the sense that they actually shed more samskaras than they form. We will read about that in the heartfulness way. What are the things which make samskara formation happen? When you read about that, it will become easier for this particular thing, but your correlation is correct. A mentally challenged person cannot realize God in this life. It's the same thing for a schizophrenia patient.
Okay.
A chronic schizophrenia patient cannot realize God in this particular life. The simple reason is a chronic schizophrenia patient has excessive imagination. And God is not imagination, God is reality. So, excessive imagination and reality are opposite to one another. So, as we grow in spirituality, the imagination gradually shuts down in us. That's when we start aligning to reality as it is. A chronic schizophrenia patient, many times even bipolar patients, they have overactive imagination. As long as they have overactive imagination, they will not be able to realize God in this life. Which is also the reason why in the past, any person who was diagnosed with mental illness were barred from meditation. But now things have changed. At least in our system, if somebody has some anxiety, some depression, we still welcome them. We still ask them to come and take sittings, we clean them, and we see that they respond to the cleaning and then they actually become better. After they become better, they will be made normal abhyasis. So that's a different than what it used to be. In the past, even in our own system, during Charis's time, if somebody were to come and say that we are on some issues with the mind and some medication, they would be barred from the system. But that kind of a approach is no longer there even in our system. We do try to help in the way that we can as preceptors. Okay? ಸರಿ ಎಲ್ಲದು ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಮುಗಿತಾ
Sir,
ನಿತಿನ್?
just out of curiosity, because I've read about BPD, borderline personality disorders. So what about those patients?
Same thing. Borderline personality people are more prone for emotional turmoil and excessive imagination, suspicions.
Okay.
So they create lot of samskaras. In fact, not only borderline personality, all personality disorders, as of now in psychiatry, there is no specific cure for it. We only give on and off some medications for some symptoms. So in order that we need to have people with any personality disorder, thorough cleaning for about 2 to 3 years will actually change them as a person. Only cleaning. All that they have to do is they should not become normal abhyasis. They should go on taking every week sittings, 2 cleaning sessions with the preceptor. Then you will see that within 2 years or 3 years, there will be a substantial change in their personality. The intensity of the personality disorder will substantially come down. So they will mingle far more easily with other people and get along with them. Okay? OCD, nothing to worry again. OCD is a condition which is there for generally longer period of time. But once we are in meditation and once we learn how to take care of the mind, OCD will no longer be an issue. But for somebody who doesn't do it and only depends on medications, then OCD can be challenging throughout their life. There are few people who get OCD for 1 or 2 years and after that they never get it through their life. But quite a few of the OCD patients will have OCD symptoms on and off for many years in their life. But quite a few of them also grow out of it. Many people tend to have OCD symptoms between 15 and 20, 25. After 25, they generally tend to grow out of it. There are quite a few people who no longer have OCD symptoms after 25. So that's the answer. Okay.
Sir, also just a compliment, sir. I feel extremely lucky and honored to talk to somebody who has knowledge on both spirituality and also like in psychiatry and stuff. So thanks.
ಏನ್ರಿ ಎಲ್ಲೋ ಹಾ
ಇಲ್ಲ ಸರ್, ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ವೆರಿ 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 ಯುನೀಕ್ ಸೆಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಇದಂತ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಯಾ,
we want
Very,
all
very
of
true.
you to develop all of you to develop both these aspects. That's why we're explaining all these things. ಒಂದು ಸೆನ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬಾಬುಜಿ ಅವ್ರು ಹೆಂಗ್ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತ ನಿಮಗೆ ಇಂಡಿಕೇಶನ್ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಮಾಸ್ಟರ್ಸ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ಗೆ ಬೇಕಾದಂಥವ್ರನ್ನ ತಯಾರು ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಸಮಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಆಯಾ ಸಮಯಕ್ಕೆ ಯಾರ್ಯಾವ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಷನಲ್ ಬೇಕಾಗ್ತಾರೋ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ಗೆ ಅಂಥವ್ರನ್ನ ತಯಾರು ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಕ್ವೈಟ್ ಆಗಿ ತಯಾರು ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಯಾರಿಗೂ ಗೊತ್ತೇ ಆಗಲ್ಲ. ಆ ತಯಾರು ಮಾಡಿರೋದು ಕಾಲಕ್ರಮೇಣದಲ್ಲಿ ಇಡೀ ಮಿಷನ್ಗೆ ಉಪಯೋಗಕ್ಕೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. Because after all, we're all being prepared as servants for the mission or flag bearers of the mission. So what we do is gradually pass on whatever we gather through our learnings and experience to the next generation. ನೆನ್ನೆ ಒಬ್ಬರಿಗೆ ಟಾರ್ಗೆಟ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀನಿ ಬೇರೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಪರ್ಸೆಪ್ಟರ್ಸ್ಗೆ. ವಿ ನೀಡ್ ಟು ಗೆಟ್ ಅಟ್ ಲೀಸ್ಟ್ 100 ಪರ್ಸೆಪ್ಟರ್ಸ್ ಅಂಡರ್ 30 years of age every year ಅಂತ ಇನ್ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ಫಾರ್ ದ ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ 5 years. That's the target given. So that if we can get about 500 to 1000 perceptors over the next 5 to 10 years, they can uphold the mission and run the mission and expand the mission over the course of the next 30 to 40 years. So we require a lot of youth, and we require a lot of youth who are well informed. ಈಗ ತಾನು ಸಾಯಂಕಾಲ ಉಲ್ಲಾಸ್ ಫೋನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ರು, one of the perceptors who comes here for training. We were just discussing how foolishly we keep our intellect away as far as spirituality is concerned. In every aspect of life, we apply our intellectuality. But when it comes to spirituality, somehow we tend to keep it away, keep it aside as if it's useless. But that's not the right approach. We have to utilize the intellectuality for accelerating our journey. That is the right approach. Okay. Now, when the intellectuality gets aligned towards reality, in the direction of reality, the intellectuality now becomes your good friend and helps you progress faster. Okay, ಹೇಳ್ರಿ ನಿಖಿಲ್.
ಸರ್, ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಮೇನ್ ಏನಂತ ಅಂದರೆ ಅ ಲಾಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಪ್ರಾಕ್ಟಿಕಲ್ ಆಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಸ್ಪಿರಿಚುಯಾಲಿಟಿ ಇಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಪ್ರೊಪಗೇಟೆಡ್ ಟು ಅ ಲಾರ್ಜರ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ. ಲೈಕ್ ಇಫ್ somebody had just out of my experience ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ತಿರೋದು, if somebody had taught me about cleaning samskaras or in terms of what is mind, senses, how are we occupying, like how are we making those samskaras through this, the senses of the mind, and what is dharana, what is itara. So all of these practical aspects of spirituality is not, I think it still has to be propagated to a larger extent before we talk about God anta ansutte. This is my opinion. So basically adrinda I think we are still not attracting a lot of people anta ansutte.
See, when we talk about a particular system which can cater to the needs of the population, lot more people will come. When we don't align the needs of the population to the ultimate goal, and we only talk about the ultimate goal, see, spirituality should be something that will give you results here and now and also later on. It should give you simple interest and compound interest. Then people will come. When we talk about something that's going to be happening over a period of few years, how will people be drawn about it? Right? So that's not going to make anybody interested. So we need to, for example, the needs of person who are, what do you say, in different stages of the life will be different. So somebody who is youngster who's studying in college will be different. Somebody who's now looking at career and then trying to grow in the career will be different. Somebody who's now married and faces the challenges in marriage will be different. Somebody who's like a middle-aged person will be different. The challenges and the needs will be different. So we have to align the work of spirituality to the needs of the person that we see. Then they will feel that it is relevant for their life. Otherwise, as you say, many people might not even relate to that issue. In fact, during Babuji's time, people used to come in search of God. I want realization. But nowadays, all that people come for is, I want some peace. My mind has become peaced. I want some peace to bring together the peace of the mind. ಅಷ್ಟೇ. But problem ಏನಪ್ಪ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, if we think of only peace as the goal, of course we get peace to some extent. But it's not going to lead you anywhere further. But if we think of realization as an aspect of our journey, then peace will come automatically. So that's also something that we have to impress some of the people who look for peace. Nothing wrong with looking for the peace. But if you can look for something higher and peace is a byproduct of that, why not? So anyway, methods of spiritual training commonly adopted by most of the teachers today are based on hard or fast rules which often do not correspond with our worldly life. Hence, in most cases, they prove to be of impracticable for those leading a worldly life. Generally, teachers induce people to practice restraint by adopting particular forms of living disconnected with worldly concerns and to practice devotion for hours together. Evidently, such a type of training is not meant for people in general who cannot dissociate themselves from worldly ties or devote so much time to their devotional exercise. It is for this reason that their preachings do not produce the desired effect, and in spite of their best efforts, they fail to mold them accordingly. The fact is that they are more theoretical than practical. Is it ever possible for the masses to renounce the world for the sake of liberation? Certainly not. What good then do the common people derive from their teachings? Some of them are even bold enough to proclaim their mistaken notion that higher attainments in spirituality is not possible in the Grihastha ashram or household life. It really means that they have nothing to impart to the common people except to tell them certain specific things, superficial things such as frequent bathing in the Ganges, feeding the fishes with flour pills, or reading the scriptures over and over again. This is what is preached. Many people are taught to repeat the Mahavakya of the Upanishads again and again. This is what they are taught. Or somebody is given a mantra in the ears and say, your lifelong you repeat this mantra. When you ask people to do these mechanical practices, no amount of subtlety develops. When we do grosser practice, how can you expect subtleness to develop in the system? So, if we want to develop subtleness in the system, we need to develop subtler practices. The real problem before us is not to provide means for the spiritual training of a chosen few who have renounced the world, but for people in general whose duties in the world beside the devotional are manifold, which they cannot safely ignore. They in fact fail in their duty if they neglect any of them. To them, it is essential that their spiritual as well as the worldly life must go on side by side, equally resplendent, and for this we have to discover the right means. Proper spiritual training, fitting closely with the present worldly life, is therefore the only thing required for the spiritual growth of the common people. So please underline that. Proper spiritual training, fitting closely with the present worldly life, is therefore the only thing required for the spiritual growth of the common people. Paragraph ಮುಗಿಸ್ಬಿಡೋಣ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಬರ್ತೀನಿ Trishul. And it has so far unfortunately been neglected. For such a type of training, we stand in need of a help from outside in most cases. This help comes from the guru or the master, who is the only person able to shape our destiny. When this help comes, the spiritual life is awakened and the higher powers of the soul are aroused to help our growth. So the help from the master is indispensable. ಅದನ್ನ ಬಾಬುಜಿ ಅವರು ಕರೀತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಹೇಳಪ್ಪ ತ್ರಿಶೂಲ್.
So basically, doctor, what I wanted to know, in all of these aspects, how important is sensitivity to receiving this? So you have told me lots of time about sensitivity. So, for example, you told me an example. There was a chain smoker who used to come to your sitting, and that guy during a period of 1 year, 1.5 year, he completely left smoking. So, did that person have this natural sensitivity to receive what you were giving, or do we, have to develop this over a time? So, how is it?
Some people are born with sensitivity. So they come endowed with sensitivity. Now, see, remember, there's a word called as Purushartha.
Hmm.
Nothing comes by chance in life. Everything has to be acquired by our effort. Now, if you
Okay.
take this logic, somebody who's born in sensitivity, with sensitivity in this life, would mean that they have strived for developing that sensitivity in the past life.
Right.
Whatever strivings that they did in the past life, they will carry that as a natural recourse as sensitivity in this life. But not
Right.
everyone is endowed with that. Some people might not have tried anything in the past life. In them, what happens when they're born in this life, they will have to work on developing the sensitivity. So you get both categories of people. Some people who come endowed with sensitivity, some people who are not that sensitive, to whom you have to teach and help them develop sensitivity.
Right. Correct.
Okay. So there
Yes.
are quite a few of the people that you are coming here. Quite a few of you are sensitive, pretty sensitive for your age. In fact, when
Right.
you come to meditation at an earlier age, you are far more sensitive. the sensitivity naturally goes on decreasing as we grow older. So the earlier you're in meditation, the better it is. So if somebody is at 15 or 16, they join meditation, they tend to have far more sensitivity by the time they come to 20, 22, or 25. But somebody who joins at 40, 50 will take some more time to develop sensitivity. Youngsters develop sensitivity much faster. They already have, the simple reason is sensitivity is directly proportional to the purity of the system. And youngsters have not become so impure like a middle-aged or a old-aged person because they have not accumulated so much samskara in this life. They only lived about 15, 20, 25 years of their life. So they naturally have more purity in the system compared to a middle-aged or a old-aged person. So that helps in them developing sensitivity. Secondly, in a youngster, the mind is still sharp, the intellect is sharp. So since the intellect is sharp and their observation capacity is also good, it becomes easier for them to develop the sensitivity. Okay, so there are multiple factors to be taken into account. The the intellectual capacity of the person, the ability of the person to grasp the concepts that we give them in spirituality, the age of the person, the way that they have led their life till now in this particular life, whether they're born with sensitivity, what are the other issues that are preoccupying their mind. Suppose somebody is going through stress or depression or major mental health issues, their sensitivity will always be low. So somebody's whose sensitivity will be high are those people whose mental health issues are not very strong. They might have some issues, but they can get over it very easily and develop that sensitivity. So there are multiple factors which can actually play a role as far as sensitivity is concerned. Okay.
Yes, understood. Thank you.
ಸೊ ಏನ್ ಎಲ್ರು ಇದ್ದೀರಾ ಅಥವಾ ಯಾರು ಇಲ್ವಾ?
Yes,
ಓ ನಾನು ಪಿಕ್ಚರ್
ಇದೀವಿ.
ಆನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿಲ್ವಾ ಅದಕ್ಕೇನೆ. ಓ ನಾನು ಮರ್ತೇ ಹೋಗಿದ್ದೀನಿ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ. ಸೊ ಜಿ ಕೆ ಏನೋ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಿದ್ಯಾ, ಜಿ ಕೆ ವಿ ಕೆ?
I was just saying yes ಅಂತ.
ಓಕೆ. ಓ ಎಲ್ರು ವಿಡಿಯೋ ಆನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ರಿ, ಎಲ್ಲ ನೀವು ನಿದ್ದೆ ಹೊಡೆದ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಹಂಗೆ ತೂಪಿಡಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರೆ ನಂಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಗೊತ್ತೇ ಆಗಲ್ಲ, ಗೊರಕೆ ಸೌಂಡ್ ಬರ್ಬೇಕು ಅಷ್ಟೇನೆ. ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಬೇರೆ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿರ್ತೀರ ಅದು ಗೊತ್ತಾಗಲ್ಲ ಇಲ್ಲಿಗೆ.
ಅಂಕಲ್ ನಾನು ಊಟ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ವಿಡಿಯೋ ಮತ್ತೆ ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ.
ಆಯ್ತು ಕಣೆ, ಬಟ್ ಎದ್ದಿದ್ಯಲ್ಲ. ಓಕೆ,
ಹಾ ಎದ್ದಿದ್ದೀನಿ.
ಇಷ್ಟು ಲೇಟ್ 10 ಕಾಲ ಆಯ್ತು.
ಜಿಮ್ ಇಂದ ಇವಾಗ ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಬಂದೆ ಅಂಕಲ್ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ.
ಓ ಜಿಮ್ಮಿಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೆ ಇವಾಗ.
ಹ್ಮ್
ಓಕೆ ಗುಡ್.
ಹಾ
ಸರಿ, ಹಾಗಾದ್ರೆ ಕಂಟಿನ್ಯೂ ಮಾಡೋಣ. 10:30 ಮುಗಿಸೋಣಂತೆ, ಇನ್ನೊಂದು 15 ನಿಮಿಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಮುಗಿಸೋಣ. ಸಿಮಿಲರ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ಕೇಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲ. ಈಗ ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ 78 ಪೇಜ್ ನಂಬರ್. ಸಚ್ ಅನ್ ಇಂಪಲ್ಸ್ ಈಸ್ ಟು ಬಿ ಸಾಟ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಒನ್ ಆಫ್ ಅವರ್ ಓನ್ ಫೆಲೋ ಬೀಯಿಂಗ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಹೈಯೆಸ್ಟ್ ಕ್ಯಾಲಿಬರ್ who may be within our approach, ready to solve our difficulties at any time. The practice of seeking inspiration or guidance from gods or demigods, or for some other departed soul, treating it as guru or master, in most cases is very dangerous. So now he is talking about the importance of the living master. Similar is also the case with those who seek guidance from their inner voice, as they call it. I have come across people who lay great stress upon their inner voice, which they think to be real guide in all controversial matters arising in the mind. We have concrete examples of people relying on their so-called inner voice who are found to have been misled in the spiritual field. Really, what they think to be their inner voice or an impulse from the departed soul is only the play of their undisciplined mind. This undesirable practice, if followed for some time, makes the mind so very unduly powerful and overactive that it begins to question and answer by itself. This the people often misunderstood as a stage of yogic attainment, where one acquires the power to intercommune with departed souls. They are really far away from it. ನನಗೆ ಒಂದು ಪೇಷಂಟ್ ಬಂದಿದ್ರು, ಒಂದೇ ಸತಿ ಬಂದಿದ್ದವರು, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಬರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಏನ್ ಸಿಂಪ್ಟಮ್ ತಗೊಂಡ್ಬಂದಿದ್ದು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ನಮ್ಮ ಮನೆಗೆ ರಾಘವೇಂದ್ರ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಊಟಕ್ಕೆ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ನಿನ್ನೆ ರಾಘವೇಂದ್ರ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಬಂದಿದ್ರು, ಇವತ್ತು ಶಿರಡಿ ಸಾಯಿಬಾಬಾ ಬಂದಿದ್ರು ಊಟಕ್ಕೆ. ಅವ್ರಿಗೆಲ್ರಿಗೂ ನಾ ಫೀಡ್ ಮಾಡಿದೆ. ಅಂಡ್ ಅವ್ರು ನನ್ನ ಹತ್ರ ಯಾಕೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾ ಬಂದಿದ್ದು, ಅವರೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಬಂದು ಊಟ ತಿನ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತಿರೋವರೆಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಇವ್ರು ಖುಷಿಯಾಗೇ ಇದ್ರು. ಓ ಏನೋ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ, ನಾನು ಸ್ಪಿರಿಚುವಲ್ ಇವಾಲ್ವ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದೀನಿ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ರು. ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ದಿವಸ ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಅವ್ರಿಬ್ರು ಫೈಟ್ ಆಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರಂತೆ, ರಾಘವೇಂದ್ರ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಮತ್ತು ಶಿರಡಿ ಸಾಯಿಬಾಬಾ. ಸರ್ ಇವ್ರಿಬ್ರು ಫೈಟ್ ಆಡ್ತಿದ್ರೆ ತಡ್ಕೊಳಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಬಂದಿದ್ದೀನಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಲೆಕ್ಕ ಹಾಕಿ ಎಷ್ಟು ಮಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಆ ಇಮ್ಯಾಜಿನೇಷನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅಷ್ಟರ ಮಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಮುಳುಗೋಗಿದ್ರು ಅವರು. ದ ಇಮ್ಯಾಜಿನೇಷನ್ ಇಟ್ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ ಹ್ಯಾಡ್ ಅಕ್ವೈರ್ಡ್ ಎ ನ್ಯೂ ಲೈಫ್ ಆಫ್ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಓನ್. And this they thought, and this is what Babuji is writing here, that it's the play of an undisciplined mind. ಆಯ್ತಾ? ಹಾಗಾದ್ರೆ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಹೆಂಗ್ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗತ್ತೆ ಡಿಸಿಪ್ಲಿನ್ಡ್ ಮೈಂಡ್ ಇದೆ ಅನ್ಡಿಸಿಪ್ಲಿನ್ಡ್ ಮೈಂಡ್ ಇದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ? ಡಿಸಿಪ್ಲಿನ್ಡ್ ಮೈಂಡ್ ಆದಾಗ ಯು ಡೋಂಟ್ ಲೂಸ್ ಟಚ್ ವಿತ್ ದಿಸ್ ರಿಯಾಲಿಟಿ. You will continue to do interact. When the people lose touch with this reality, they become dysfunctional in this life. So if they talk about all these things, look for how they are functioning in their life. If they are reasonably functioning well in their life, that means their mind is still disciplined and they are evolving. If they become undisciplined or indisciplined, then what happens? They lose their ability to function in this life. So they become more and more dependent on others in this particular life. This is what happens. So they will not be able to do appropriate social interactions. They will not be able to hold on to a job. All these problems will come. And then you will see that they will have excessive imagination. And they'll have a lot of emotional outbursts. All these things will be there. Okay? The inner voice or the voice of the real self is no doubt never misleading. But how many are there who are advanced enough to catch it? To most of those who profess to follow the inner voice, it is quite inaudible. They are merely being fooled by the wonder working tendencies of the mind, which can create anything and everything by itself. It can even present fearful ghosts to their view or make them hear strange voices in trees and stones. This is all due to the activities of the mind, which is undisciplined and polluted. Unless the coverings of the Mala, Vikshepa, and Avarana are removed and the mind is brought to a state of perfect poise and moderation, inspiration or guidance from the inner voice is meaningless. So he's now giving the condition. When does the inner voice actually become relevant? It is only become relevant after the Mala, Vikshepa, Avarana has been removed and the mind has been brought to a perfect poise and moderation. Most of those who pose to follow their inner voice or seek guidance from the departed soul are really following the dictates of their own unregulated and undisciplined mind. It is mere hallucination. If we develop this vicious habit, we are lost forever. It leads us to constant mental worry and harassment. I know of a gentleman prominent among the so-called Bhaktas who professed that he had secured direct communication with the soul of Tulsidas, the author of Ramayana, whom he had taken as his guru. He went on for some time feeling exultant over his supposed achievement. Later on, a discord arose between him and his celestial guru, which soon developed into a bitter quarrel, on account of which he used to say he was constantly belabored and harassed mentally, with the result that his mental equilibrium was almost shattered, and he felt extremely miserable. It was after 2 years of hard labor with him that he was cured of this evil. In other words, this fellow had gone into psychosis. So 2 ವರ್ಷ ಅವ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಸೈಕೋಸಿಸ್ ಇಂದ ಹೊರಗಡೆ ತಂದಿದ್ದಾಯ್ತು, ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಆಯ್ತು. Then he was able to understand that it was all an illusion or self-deception, and what he understood to be the inspiration from the soul of Tulsidas was really the magic play of his own undisciplined mind. Since he has been relieved of that miserable state, he now feels peace and tranquility restored to him. ಈ ತರ ನಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಬಂದಿರತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಪೇಷಂಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲೂ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಒಂದಿಬ್ರು ಪೇಷಂಟ್ ಸ್ಕಿಜೋಫ್ರೀನಿಯಾ ಅಂತ ಡಯಾಗ್ನೋಸ್ ಆದವರು ಕೂಡ ಪೂರ್ತಿ ರಿಕವರ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ದೇ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಬೀನ್ ಏಬಲ್ ಟು ಕಮ್ ಆಫ್ ಮೆಡಿಕೇಶನ್ಸ್. ಸೊ ದಟ್ಸ್ ದ ವಂಡರ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿಸ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್, ದಟ್ ಇಫ್ ದೇ ಅಂಡರ್ಗೋ ರೆಗ್ಯುಲರ್ ಥರೋ ಕ್ಲೀನಿಂಗ್ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಮೆನಿ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ಪೇಷಂಟ್ಸ್ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಗೆಟ್ ರಿಲೀವ್ ದ ಕಂಡೀಷನ್ಸ್ ಪರ್ಮನೆಂಟ್ಲಿ. ಡಿಪ್ರೆಷನ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಆಂಗ್ಸೈಟಿ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಸೈಕೋಸಿಸ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಅವೆಲ್ಲ ಕೂಡ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಬಟ್ ಅರ್ಲಿಯರ್ ದೇ ಕಮ್ ಫಾರ್ ಟ್ರೀಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್, ದ ಬೆಟರ್ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ದ ಔಟ್ಕಮ್, ಲೈಕ್ ಎನಿಥಿಂಗ್. Okay? The inner voice is in fact the voice of the mind in its purely perfect state. ಅದನ್ನ ಅಂಡರ್ಲೈನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಡ್ರಿ. ವಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ಇನ್ನರ್ ವಾಯ್ಸ್? Until the mind is cleared of all pollutions and defilements and is brought to a state of perfect peace and moderation, it can never reflect the inner voice. In fact, whose mind is perfectly pure, it is his inner voice alone that always speaks, and the impulse from highly developed, liberated souls continues to flow to him continuously. The practice is thus evidently very dangerous and in most cases leads to disastrous results. The realization of God, which has so far been considered to be extremely difficult, requiring hard labor and persistent effort for many lives, is not really so. God is simple and can be achieved by equally simple means. The hard and the fast rules of the life and tiring practices prescribed by teachers for realization have really made matters so complicated that people are led to believe it to be beyond their power and capacity. I may assure you very sincerely that realization is not at all a difficult thing, if only you earnestly divert your attention to it. And iron will to achieve the goal, together with proper means and guidance, is the only thing required for the complete success. ಹೇಳ್ರಿ ನಿಖಿಲ್.
ಸರ್ ಏನು ಸರ್ ಅದೇ ಅದು ಮೂರು ಕೀಟಂ ಬಂತ ಸರ್, ಮಲ ವಿಕ್ಷೇಪ ಆವರಣ, ಅದ್ರದ್ದು ಅರ್ಥನೇ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ ಸರ್.
ಮಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಅದು ಸಾಂಸ್ಕ್ರಿಟ್ ವರ್ಡ್, ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲೂ ಮಲ ಅಂತಾನೆ ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸ್ತೀವಿ. ಮಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇಂಪ್ಯೂರಿಟೀಸ್. ವಿಕ್ಷೇಪ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಡಿಸ್ಟಾರ್ಷನ್. ಆವರಣ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಕವರಿಂಗ್. ಸರಿನಾ? ಸೊ ಮೊದಲು ನಾವು ಮಲಾನ ಡೆವಲಪ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀವಿ, ಸಂಸ್ಕಾರಗಳು. ನಮ್ಮ ಇಂಟ್ರಾಕ್ಷನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಸಂಸ್ಕಾರಗಳನ್ನ ಡೆವಲಪ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀವಿ. ಸೋಲ್ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಿದೆ, ಬಾಡಿ ಮೈಂಡ್ ನ ತಗೊಂಡು ಬಂದಿದೆ ಈ ಜನ್ಮಕ್ಕೆ. ಯಾತಕ್ಕೆ? ತನ್ನ ಕೆಲಸ ತಾನು ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕು ಅಂತ. ಏನ್ ಸೋಲ್ಗೆ ಏನ್ ಕೆಲಸ? ಭಗವಂತನ ಜೊತೆ ತನ್ನ ನಿಕಟವಾದಂತ ಸಂಬಂಧ ಏನಿತ್ತು ಅದನ್ನ ಮತ್ತೆ ಸ್ಥಾಪನೆ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಬಂದಿದೆ ಸೋಲ್. ದ ಸೋಲ್ ವಾಂಟ್ಸ್ ಯೂನಿಟಿ ವಿತ್ ದ ಸುಪ್ರೀಂ ಸೋಲ್. ದಟ್ಸ್ ಆಲ್ ಇಟ್ ವಾಂಟ್ಸ್. Now it has taken the help of the body and the mind to come into this life to achieve that purpose. After coming to life here, it starts forming samskaras because of the various interactions, various input it gets. Now that samskaras will now start covering the soul. Now, if the soul allows that samskaras to have an impact on the body and the mind, then the soul loses the utility of the body and the mind it has brought for its purpose. So what the soul does is that it starts projecting the I from itself on to cover these samskaras. So this covering from the soul around the samskaras is the avarana. What is avarana? Avarana is nothing but the covering from the soul to around the samskaras, so that the samskaras do not impact the functioning of the body and the mind. ಇದು ನೋಡಿದಿರಾ? ಮನಸ್ಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಟೆನ್ಷನ್ ಬಿಲ್ಡಪ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಹೋಗುತ್ತೆ, ಬಟ್ ಸ್ಟಿಲ್ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಏಬಲ್ ಟು ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ ರೀಸನಬ್ಲಿ ವೆಲ್. ಆಫ್ಟರ್ ಸಮ್ ಪೀರಿಯಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಟೈಮ್ ವಿಲ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಎ ಮೇಜರ್ ಬ್ರೇಕ್ ಡೌನ್. ತುಂಬಾ ಜನಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗಿರ್ತೀನಿ. ಆ ಪೀರಿಯಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಬ್ರೇಕ್ ಡೌನ್ ಬರ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಮುಂಚೆ, ಆ ಮುಂಚಿನ ಪೀರಿಯಡ್ ಇದೆಲ್ಲ, ವೇರ್ ಥಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ಗೆಟ್ ಅಕ್ಯುಮುಲೇಟೆಡ್ ಓವರ್ ಎ ಪೀರಿಯಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಟೈಮ್, ಹೌ ಡಸ್ ದ ಮೈಂಡ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಬಾಡಿ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ ಅಟ್ ದಟ್ ಟೈಮ್ ರೀಸನಬ್ಲಿ ಓಕೆ? ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಆವರಣ. ದ ಆವರಣ ಕವರ್ಸ್ ಇಟ್. ದಿಸ್ ಆವರಣ ಈಸ್ ದ ಔಟರ್ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ಕವರಿಂಗ್ is called as the ego. Ego andre outermost covering of the impurities. That's all the ego is. So we cannot work directly on the ego. Ego ಮೇಲೆ ಒಂದೇ ರೀತಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗೋದು. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಸ್ತರದಲ್ಲಿ ಇಷ್ಟು ತಿಳ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಸಾಕು, ಎರಡು ರೀತಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. ಒಂದು, ಮಲನ ನಾವು ಕ್ಲೀನ್ ಮಾಡಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ತಿದ್ದಂಗೆ ರೆಗ್ಯುಲರ್ ಸಿಟ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಬಂದಾಗ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಇಂಪ್ಯೂರಿಟೀಸ್ ಕ್ಲೀನ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಹೋಗುತ್ತೆ ರೆಗ್ಯುಲರ್ ಆಗಿ. ಇಂಪ್ಯೂರಿಟೀಸ್ ಕ್ಲೀನ್ ಆಗ್ತಿದ್ದಂಗೆನೆ ಆವರಣ ಕೂಡ ಹಿಂದಕ್ಕೆ ಸರಿತಾ ಹೋಗುತ್ತೆ. ಇಂಪ್ಯೂರಿಟೀಸ್ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಯ್ತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಆವರಣ ಬೇಕು. ಇಂಪ್ಯೂರಿಟೀಸ್ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಆಯ್ತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಆವರಣ ಸಣ್ಣ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಹೋಗುತ್ತೆ. ಆವರಣ ಸಣ್ಣ ಆಗೋದನ್ನ ನಾವು ರಿಫೈನ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಈಗೋ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. ಸರಿನಾ? ಎರಡನೇ ರೀತಿ ಈಗೋನ ನಾವು ಕಡಿಮೆ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಯಾರು ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಏನೋ ಬೈದ್ರು, ಇನ್ಸಲ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ದಿರಾ ಅದನ್ನ ತಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಅದನ್ನ ಸರಿಯಾದಂತ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಹ್ಯಾಂಡಲ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಆ ಎಮೋಷನಲ್ ಕಂಟೆಂಟ್ ಏನ್ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಅದನ್ನ ಗ್ರಾಟಿಟ್ಯೂಡ್ ಆಗಿ ಕನ್ವರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, ಅವಾಗ ವಿ ರಿಫೈನ್ ದ ಈಗೋ. ಸೊ ದ ರೈಟ್ ವೇ ಆಫ್ ಹ್ಯಾಂಡ್ಲಿಂಗ್ ದ ಡಿಫಿಕಲ್ಟ್ ಚಾಲೆಂಜಸ್ ಇನ್ ಲೈಫ್ ವಿಲ್ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ರಿಫೈನ್ ಅವರ್ ಈಗೋ. So these are the only two ways in which we can refine the ego. Remember, even as a perceptor, you cannot directly work on the ego. We can indirectly work on refining the ego, like cleaning the impurities. That's what happens in our system. ಸರಿನಾ? ಇದು ಮಲ ಆಯ್ತು, ಆವರಣ ಆಯ್ತು. ವಿಕ್ಷೇಪ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ when the samskaras cover the soul's vision, ಮೈಂಡ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಅಕ್ಯುಮುಲೇಟ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಹೋಗುತ್ತೆ ಸಂಸ್ಕಾರಗಳು ಈ ಜನ್ಮದಲ್ಲಿ. ಸೊ ವಿ ಬಿಕಮ್ ಕಂಡೀಷನ್ಡ್ ಟು ಸಿ ದ ವರ್ಲ್ಡ್ ಇನ್ ಎ ಸರ್ಟನ್ ವೇ. That is the vikshepa. Vikshepa means distortion in the vision of the world. We don't see the world as it is created by God. We see the world in a distorted way because of the samskaras that we have put in the system. That is called as vikshepa. So mala and the impurities, mala then is covered by the avarana, and the presence of the avarana and the mala distorts our vision, and that is the vikshepa. ಸರಿನಾ? ಸೊ ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಹಾಗಾದ್ರೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಮಲ ಕ್ಲೀನ್ ಆಗ್ತಿದ್ದಂಗೆನೆ ವಿಕ್ಷೇಪ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಹೋಗುತ್ತೆ. ವಿ ಟೆಂಡ್ ಟು ಸಿ ಥಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ಆಸ್ ದೇ ಆರ್. ವೆನ್ ವಿ ಟೆಂಡ್ ಟು ಸಿ ಥಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ಆಸ್ ದೇ ಆರ್, ಲೈಫ್ ಬಿಕಮ್ಸ್ ಈಸಿಯರ್ ಟು ಲೀಡ್. ಆಯ್ತಾ? ಸೊ ಡಿಸ್ಟಾರ್ಷನ್ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಹೋಗುತ್ತೆ, ಆವರಣನು ಕಡಿಮೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಹೋಗುತ್ತೆ, ತಾನಾಗಿ ತಾನಾಗಿ ಕ್ಲೀನ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಆಗ್ತಾ. ಓಕೆ, ಸರಿ, ಮುಂದುವರಿಯೋಣಾದರೆ ಸ್ಪಿರಿಚುವಲ್ ಟ್ರೈನಿಂಗ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ಸ್ ವಿತ್ ಇನ್ನರ್ ಕ್ಲೀನಿಂಗ್ ಆರ್ ದ ಪ್ಯೂರಿಫಿಕೇಶನ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಚಕ್ರಸ್, which is most essential factor in spiritual advancement. Thus, the right type of training in spirituality begins with inner cleaning, which, if neglected, will lead to the abuse of power acquired through yogic means. Hatha Yoga lays down mostly physical practices to effect cleaning, some of which are too hard and tedious for all and sundry, while under the system of Sahaj Marg, it is accomplished by the easy mental practices aided by the power transmitted by the teacher. Some of the teachers of religion often insist upon people devoting as many as 8 hours a day to practicing certain mechanical exercises in order to keep up their mind occupied in divine thoughts. I strongly condemn this type of training, which enforces practices that tax the brain or overburden the mind. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾರಾದ್ರೂ ಬಂದು ಹೊಸದಾಗಿ ಧ್ಯಾನ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ನನಗೆ 10 ನಿಮಿಷ 15 ನಿಮಿಷ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಕ್ಕಾಗತ್ತೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ. We don't insist that straight away you have to start with 1 hour or half an hour. We will tell them you start practicing meditation at home and see how it goes. If you can sit comfortably for 10 minutes, so sit for 10 minutes only. Then gradually, week on week, month on month, gradually increase for 5 minutes. That's all we say. So we should not overburden the mind or tax the brain. The natural result of such training is that the mind finds no scope for expansion, and consequently the power of realization grows dull. So when practices are imposed artificially on the mind grows dull. It is just like thrashing a boy in order to induce him to concentrate. Strenuous labor with long and tedious physical practices, as commonly recommended by teachers in order to effect the molding of the mind or the cleaning of the chakras, is consequently not of much avail. For this purpose, we utilize our thought power in a proper way under the guidance of the powerful master who is capable of removing complexities and entanglements that hinder our progress and who transmit into us the force necessary for the upkeep of our spiritual life. The simplified course of spiritual training has tendered the highest spiritual flight possible for everyone, whether man, woman, young or old, grasta or virakta. ಇದು ಅರ್ಥ ಆಯ್ತಾ ನಮ್ಮ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ? ಫಾರ್ ದ ಪರ್ಪಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಕ್ಲೀನಿಂಗ್ ವಿ ಯುಟಿಲೈಸ್ ಅವರ್ ಥಾಟ್ ಫೋರ್ಸ್ or thought power in a proper way under the guidance of a capable guru to remove the complexities and the impurities or the entanglements. And then who the guru also transmit into us the force necessary for the upkeep of our spiritual life. The preliminary step in the right type of training is that of the aspirant's tendencies of the mind be diverted towards God. Now, ನಿಖಿಲ್ ನಿನ್ನ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗೆ ಉತ್ತರ ಬರ್ತಿದೆ. ನೀ ಕೇಳಿದೆಲ್ಲ ಪೀಸ್ ಕೊಡಬೇಕು ಅಥವಾ ಕಾಮ್ನೆಸ್ ಕೊಡಬೇಕು ಅಥವಾ ಬೇರೆ ಏನೋ ಕೊಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಬಾಬುಜಿ ಅವರು ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಉತ್ತರ ಕೊಡ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಇನ್ ಹಿಸ್ ಓನ್ ವೇ. The preliminary step in the right type of training is that the aspirant's tendencies of the mind be directed towards God. For this, the learned teachers of religion mostly prescribe physical practices of the body and mind picked up from religious books. People often find it as a hard task to follow them, and thus they remain lingering on indefinitely in the beginning with no further progress. A capable teacher should do this by his own effort, exercising the power of transmission in order to create a permanent and deep-rooted effect. In our system, this tendency of the mind to be directed towards God is done by the powerful power of the master. So we don't expect the Abhyasi to do it. It is done by the power of the master. Naturally, it occurs. When our mind is directed towards God, we naturally begin to feel ourselves in touch with the supreme power in all our actions and workings. When this state of mind is permanently established within every act we do, will then seem to be part of devotion or divine offerings, and we shall thereby be in constant remembrance of God all the while. Inner vibrations in the heart soon begin to be felt by the aspirant. This is the beginning of the spiritual state known as Shabda or Ajapa. It develops automatically as we proceed along the right path under proper guidance. Certain people who practice japa outwardly for a long time sometimes find that even during sleep they go on with the japa as usual. This they misunderstand as ajapa or shabda. It is not really so. By constant practice, their heart and tongue becomes habituated to it, and the action continues even when they are in sleep or otherwise unconscious. It, however, stops if they give up the practice for some time. This is only by the force of habit and is not the actual state of ajapa. ಸೊ ಅಜಪದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅಜಪ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಒಳಗಡೆಯಿಂದ ವೈಬ್ರೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಶುರು ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ವಿ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಫೀಲಿಂಗ್ ಸರ್ಟನ್ ವೈಬ್ರೇಷನ್ಸ್ ವಿತೌಟ್ ಎನಿ ಎಫರ್ಟ್, ಅಂಡ್ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಎನಿ ಹ್ಯಾಬಿಟ್. ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಅಜಪ. ದಟ್ಸ್ ಎ ಸ್ಪಿರಿಚುವಲ್ ಅಟೈನ್ಮೆಂಟ್. ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ಆಗ್ಲೇಬೇಕಂತೇನಿಲ್ಲ, ಕೆಲವರೆಲ್ಲ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಬಟ್ ಯಾರು ಹೊರಗಡೆಯಿಂದ ಜಪ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತಾರೋ ಪದೇ ಪದೇ, ಅವರಲ್ಲಿ ಹಾರ್ಟ್ ಮೈಂಡ್ ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ನಿದ್ದೆನಲ್ಲೂ ನಾಲ್ಗೆ ಹಂಗೆ ಮೂವ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. It's because of the activity of the activity of the brain, which is wired into this japa. And this they think as ajapa. But if they leave the habit for a few days, that goes away. So that is an indication. It's nothing to do with spiritual attainment. It is only a mentally imposed practice. ಸರಿನಾ? ಸರಿ, ಇದೊಂದು ಪ್ಯಾರಾಗ್ರಾಫ್ ಮುಗಿಸ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ನಿಲ್ಸೋಣಂತೆ. The condition of ajapa, rightly believed to be a high spiritual attainment acquired after years of hard labor, is only a matter of weeks or rather days through right training by the process of transmission. The vibrations thus created remain for some time located in the heart, after which they gradually develop over to other chakras and finally to every particle of the body. It is then known as anahata. So vibrations are initially felt in the heart, gradually they spread to other chakras and to the entire body. Then it is called as anahata. The method to be pursued as recommended in our mission is meditation under efficient guidance, which is by far the most useful and probably the only means of securing complete success. ಸರಿನಾ? ಇಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಸ್ಟಾಪ್ ಮಾಡೋಣ. And we shall continue on Saturday with this particular chapter, and then we go towards faith. ಸರಿನಾ? ಸೊ ಇನ್ನೇನಾದ್ರು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗಳಿತ್ತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸಿಗೆ ಬಂದಾಗ ಸ್ಯಾಟರ್ಡೆ ವಿಲ್ ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್. ಓಕೆನಾ? ನಿತಿನ್, ಊಟ ಆಯ್ತೇನೋ?
ಹಾ ಅಂಕಲ್, ಆಯ್ತು, ಇವಾಗ ಆಯ್ತು.
ತ್ರಿಶೂಲ್, ಎದ್ದಿದ್ಯೇನೋ?
Yeah, yeah.
ಆಫೀಸಿಗೆ
Yeah, I just came from the office.
ಓಕೆ.
Yes.
ಜಿಕೆ ಎದ್ದಿದ್ಯೇನೋ?
Present, sir.
ಹೌದಾ? ಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟ್ ಎದ್ದಿದ್ಯಾ? ಆಯ್ತು, ಸರಿ ಕಣ್ರಿ. ಸರಿ, ಹಾಗಾದ್ರೆ ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ಜಾಯ್ನಿಂಗ್ ಇನ್. ಐ ವಿಲ್ ಅಪ್ಲೋಡ್ ದ ವಿಡಿಯೋ ಲೇಟರ್ ಆನ್. ಗುಡ್ ನೈಟ್ ಟು ಎವ್ರಿ ಒನ್. ಸರಿನಾ? ವಿಲ್ ಜಾಯಿನ್ ಅಗೇನ್ ಆನ್ ಸ್ಯಾಟರ್ಡೆ. ಐ ವಿಲ್ ಪುಟ್ ದ ಟೈಮ್ ಆನ್ ಸ್ಯಾಟರ್ಡೆ. ಓಕೆ, ಸರಿ ಹಾಗಾದ್ರೆ. ನಮಸ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಐ ಸಿ ಯು ಸೂನ್, ನಿಖಿಲ್, ಫಾರ್ ಯುವರ್ ಸಿಟ್ಟಿಂಗ್.
ಸರಿ ಸರ್, ಟ್ಯೂಸ್ಡೇ ಸರ್.
ಮೆಸೇಜ್ ಮಾಡಿ ನೀವು. ಓಕೆ,
ಓಕೆ,
ಬಾಯ್.
ಬಾಯ್ ಸರ್.
Good night. Bye bye.
ಓಕೆ, ಬಾಯ್, ಗುಡ್ ನೈಟ್.
Good night.